Hey, good morning everyone and welcome sa subject natin, Math 223. And for today's lesson, we will be tackling an introduction sa complex numbers and also we'll discuss yung sum of operations na ginagamit for complex numbers. Okay? So as a guide for this session, here's our outline. We have first, we'll introduce yung complex number and the imaginary unit. Okay, and we have the different powers of the imaginary unit, the complex plane na tinatawag natin, and lastly is yung operations na ginagamit natin for complex numbers. So the main objective of this session are as follows: to one, to define yung imaginary unit natin and complex numbers. Next is to demonstrate how complex number systems identified, or how can we convert a given number into the standard form ng complex number natin. And then we have the operations for complex number, which is to add and subtract and multiply and divide yung complex numbers natin. Okay? So to start, we need to refresh ourselves with what we call number system na ginagamit natin sa mathematics, no? So shown here is yung kumbaga universal number system natin. Okay? So from preschool hanggang mag-college tayo, ito yung mga numbers tinatakal natin. Pero nung nag-senior high and nag-college tayo, medyo na-expose tayo ngayon dun sa mga imaginary numbers, no? So kung dati real numbers lang yung pinag-uusapan natin, so meaning it can be represented dun sa number system natin, okay? Ito yung number system natin, tapos yung 'di ba yung mga horizontal line na may bar line tayo. Si rational number are composed of integers and natural number. So ibig sabihin pwede siyang fraction, pwede siyang decimal, and then yung fractional part natin pwede siyang i-represent by two integer, no? Yung ibig sabihin yung numerator and denominator natin, um, meron siyang ratio. Unlike sa irrational number, hindi siya pwede i-represent as a fraction. So pwede lang siyang maging decimal point na non-repeating and non-recurring number. Okay? And then nung medyo nag-higher mathematics na yung pinag-aaralan natin, siguro kahit papaano na napahaginan sa ibang subject, no, or sa senior high, may nakikita na tayong mga imaginary numbers. And yung combination nung real numbers natin and ng imaginary numbers natin, yun yung tinatawag nating complex number system natin, which will be the focus of our topic today. Okay? So, pero to better represent yung complex number system natin, we need to go back kung paano inisip before ng mathematician si imaginary number. Okay? So bakit nagkamero ng imaginary number? Bakit kailangan i-discuss kung imaginary siya, no? Um, Basically, pag sinabing imaginary, hindi niya sinasabi na non-existent siya, no? Ang sinasabi lang niya, hindi siya belong dito sa number system na to. Okay? Ibig sabihin, hindi siya nagbi-belong do sa category yun. Pero it's still a number. Imaginary lang siya. Okay? So let's recall muna yung sa quadratic equation natin. So I hope you can still remember this equation. So we have a standard form ng quadratic equation. Ang formula ay ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. So ang isang solution daw para makuha natin yung root o yung value ng x, kung paano natin siya pwede i-factor, is to use yung quadratic formula na tinatawag natin, no? And si quadratic formula na yan is ginagamit din nanggaling din yan dito, no? So when we try to divide all of our numerator or our terms by a, halimbawa, we will arrive with the same formula. So you can search out the internet na lang how the quadratic equation is derived based from the standard formula, but that formula is also, or this formula is also a product of this one. Okay? And ito, I hope you can still remember the formula, no? Kung hindi, at least please try to remember kasi this is very useful, especially when you are dealing with quadratic equations, no? So negative b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So yung mga numbers natin represented, ay yung mga letters natin o yung variables represented dito na a, b, c are from the coefficients dito, no? Yung coefficient ng ating quadratic equation terms. Okay? Then we have here yung sa loob ng square root sign natin, we have yung term na b squared minus 4ac na tinatawag nating discriminant. Okay? And may particular ruling si quadratic equation pagdating kay discriminant. Okay? So ito yung tatlong rules niya. So nire-recall lang ulit natin. Sabi kapag yung nasa loob ng quadratic equation natin is negative or less than 0, there are no real solutions. Okay? So ibig sabihin, pag kinalculate natin sa calcu, ang lalabas sa calcu natin is math error, syntax error, no? Yun ang nangyayari sa kanya. Then kapag halimbawa yung discriminant natin is equal to 0, ibig sabihin niya there is one real solution. Okay? So ibig sabihin yung kung x squared to, ibig sabihin niya kailangan natin ng dalawang value ng x. So kung one real solution siya, ibig sabihin only one value of x yung hinahanap natin. Anong example niyan? Siyempre, example niyan is yung ating x squared plus 4x plus 4 is equals to 0. Okay? Iba ang factor niyan is x plus 2 times x plus 2. So pag kinuha natin or inequate natin both factors sa 0, we will get a value of x equals to negative 2, which is yung tinatawag nating one real solution. Okay? Kasi isang value lang yung lumalabas na factor niya. Okay? Then when we get daw yung discriminant natin as greater than 0 or positive value, we have two real solutions sa kanya. Okay? So ang focus natin dito is yung sa ating negative, no? So before, nung hindi pa na tayo na-expose sa complex numbers, so hindi pa natin alam sa imaginary number, tumitigil na tayo sa calculation pag nag-less than 0 na. Kasi pag nandito yung sa loob, hindi na natin siya ma-simplify, no? Halimbawa, ano bang halimbawa ng example? No? So let's say, halimbawa, we have x squared minus 2x plus 5 is equals to 0. Okay? So yung value niyan is yung a natin is 1, ang b natin is negative 2, ang c natin ay 5. Okay? I-check lang natin yung discriminant lang yung substitute natin, no? So sa discriminant natin, we have b squared minus 4ac. Okay? So substitute natin, we have negative 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 5. So we have 4 minus 20 or negative 16. And pag chinek natin, nasa loob yan ng square root, no? Na yan, hindi natin siya masasolve. Kahit itry nyo sa calcu ngayon, kung hindi naka-complex yung system natin, malalabas is math error, no? Ayan, math error yung lumalabas. Okay? So kahit ipakita natin sa calcu natin sa screen. So let me share. Ayan. So halimbawa to, nag-square root of negative 16 tayo, lumalabas math error. Okay? So parang sinasabi niya, non-existent yung number na yon. Pero that is not the case. And mathematicians before, yan yung inisip nila. Paano natin ipapakita sa lahat ng gumagamit ng math na si number inside ng quadratic natin o nung ating radical sign also has a particular value. Kaya lang hindi siya real number, no? Kaya doon pumasok si imaginary number. Wherein may definition si imaginary number. So si square root of negative 16, we can represent that as a product of two radical sign, no? So meron tayong ruling sa radical nun, sa law of radicals, no? Balikan nyo na lang kung ano. So, law of radicals natin. Okay? Na pag meron tayong square root of AB, we can represent that as a product of the square root of A times the square root of B. Okay? So dito, pwede natin represent si square root of 16, negative 16, as a product of 16 and square root of negative 1. Kasi kailangan natin kumuha ng perfect square para malabas natin siya doon sa square root natin para ma-simplify natin siya. Si 16 is a perfect square ng 4. Kaya kailangan yung factor natin will be 16 times negative 1. So magiging sagot natin is square root of 6, magiging 4 times square root of negative 1. So this is square root of negative 1. Dito na inisip na ilan sa mga mathematicians before, no? Like Euler, no? Pero meron pa before Euler na nag-isip nung property na 'to, um, na si square root of -1 nilet niya as a particular, variable 'no, na yung tinatawagan nating imaginary number siya, okay. So, ibig sabihin, papasok tayo ngayon sa imaginary unit. So, let us call I as an imaginary unit number to represent yung root of -1, okay. So, yan yung sinasabi natin na equivalent value ng imaginary number basta square root of -1. Okay? So, kumbaga, itanggapin natin siya as a rule na pag nakakita tayo ng square root of -1, ibig sabihin I yung equivalent variable niya or digit niya. Okay? So, imaginary number yon. So, what we can do here is to eliminate yung radical sign natin. Okay? Kasi gusto natin malaman paano tayo magkakameron ng negative number kapag nag-square tayo ng number. 'Di ba pag halimbawa um, meron tayong two numbers, okay? Kapag pinag-multiply natin siya, meron tayo isang number na minultiply natin by itself, usually ang laging product natin is a positive number. Paano? Kahit halimbawa any real number, halimbawa 2 times 2, that will be positive 4, no? We have also halimbawa -2 times -2, that is also positive. So kailan siya magiging negative, no? Magiging negative siya kapag tinry natin i-square yung ating imaginary number. So from our imaginary number, we can square both sides. Okay? So ito yung I is equal to square root of -1. So pag i-square natin both sides, this will be I squared is equals to -1. So this is the only case na magkakameron tayo ng -1 na answer kapag nag-square daw tayo ng imaginary number. So meaning, when we have a square ng imaginary number, equals din yan sa -1. And when you check yung definition ni imaginary number from textbook or from online, ang ibig sabihin niya is the square of the imaginary number or the square of imaginary number is equals to -1. So that is the only time na magkakameron tayo ng negative result kapag nag-square tayo ng number. Okay? So, yan yung imaginary unit natin. And may particular usage yung ating imaginary number. So, hindi lang siya yung hanggang I squared natin. So, we can also have other power or exponent do sa imaginary number natin na we can observe kung ano yung nangyayari sa kanya. So, we have already identified na si I is equals to square root of -1. Si I squared is equals to -1. Paano si I cube? Okay? So, find out natin si I cube. So, di ba kay law ng exponent, we can use yung property niya o yung law ng exponent natin. So, nabalikan lang natin yung mga laws natin sa algebra. So meron tayo na halimbawa we have a number, okay, na a times xb. We can present this as x a plus b. Okay, when we multiply the same variable, then may difference siya na exponent, we can represent it as one variable and meron siyang sum nung respective powers niya. So, dito, si I cube, pwede natin siyang i-represent as I squared times I. Wherein yung I natin is may imaginary siyang 1. So, basically, parang sinasabi lang natin na I squared is 2 plus 1. So, balik tayo sa I cube. Okay? Pero, let's proceed dun dito sa pag-define natin. Si I squared alam na natin kasi from previous slide, we already identified or defined na si I squared ay equals naman sa -1. So we have -1 times yung value ng I natin equals to square root of -1. Okay? So ibig sabihin si I raised to cube or raised to 3 is equals to a negative square root of -1 or a negative I. Okay? So, sabihin yun yung value niya. Si I cube is equals to -I. Okay? Next is si I to the fourth. Okay? So ano naman meron kay I to the fourth? So another property naman ni exponent is when we try to raise another a variable with exponent by another exponent, anong nangyayari sa kanya? Multiply naman. Okay? So dito, pwede natin i-represent si I to the fourth as I squared, tapos naka-squared siya. So basically, sinasabi niya sa atin na I 2 times 2 or I to the fourth, no? Okay? So kung I squared na siya dito sa loob niya um, nung ating parenthesis, so we have negative 1. And then kapag i-square natin ng negative 1, that will be equals to positive 1. Therefore, meron tayong value ngayon ni I to the fourth na equals to 1. Okay? So let's continue. We have I5. Si I5, we can represent it as I to the fourth times I. Okay? And since na-identify na natin sa I to the fourth, we have ang value ni I to the fourth as computed is 1 and then times I, or ibig sabihin si I to the fifth is equals to I. Next, I to the 6. We have I to the 5 times I para I to the 6, no? So we have yung value ni I to the fifth is I times I. So ibig sabihin we have I squared or equal siya sa I squared natin as identified is equal to negative 1. Okay? Another one, we have I to the 7 is equals to I to the 6 times I. Okay? So I to the 6 natin is negative 1 times I natin. So equal siya sa negative I. Okay? Last, I to the 8. So I to the 8 is equals to I to the 7 times I. So pwede natin siyang represent as um, since identify naman natin, negative I times I. Tama ba? Negative I times I. Okay? So, and then, alam natin na negative I squared, and alam natin ang I squared ay negative 1. Okay? So, this will be positive 1. So, ano yung papansin natin? We have here a square root of negative 1, negative 1, negative I, and 1. Okay? Or I na lang dito, no? So, I, negative 1, negative I, 1. I, negative 1, negative I, 1. So, ibig sabihin nagkakameron tayo ng pattern. Okay? So, ibig sabihin sa imaginary unit, as nag-i-increase yung exponent natin, cyclic yung pattern ng mismong change ng numbers natin. From I, magiging siyang negative 1, magiging siyang negative I, and then 1. So, kung going back to sa mathematics and modern world natin, pag nakakita tayo ng pattern, so we can use this to um, explain na ito yung ating um, conclusion sa kanya, no? Na pwede siyang mag-cyclic o mag-repeat, no? So depende kung saan factor yung ating mismong exponent. So let's try other numbers or other powers without even writing lahat ng ating values na ito, no? Kung halimbawa kasi mag-iba yung value natin, hindi naman siyempre magpapakahirap tayong uulitin natin lagi siya from the start, no? So, we can use a simple trick kung paano siya i-solve, and let's apply this to the following examples, no? So, let's say we need to identify si I raised to 20, okay? So, I raised to 20, what I would do is to think of a number na divisible by 4, okay? Bakit divisible by 4? Kasi alam natin si 4 na equal siya sa 1, no? So, whatever yung exponent niya, it will always yield into positive 1. Okay? So dito sa first example natin, si 20 is divisible by 4. Okay? Divisible siya by 4. Pwede siya maging factor niya 4 times 5, no? So we can represent si I raised to 20 as I times 4 times I times 5. No, sorry. So we can represent it I to the 4th times yan, raised to 5. Okay, para multiply yung exponent natin. Tama ba? And then we can rewrite I to the 4 as equal to, from our analysis dito, we have I to the 4 equals to 1. So dito magiging siyang 1 raised to 5. So any number or 1 raised to any number will be equal to a positive number will be equals to 1. Okay? So ibig sabihin si I raised to 20 ay equal to 1. Next, si I raised to 138. So anong factor pwede para maging siyang divisible by 4? So we can use I to the 4th. Pwede natin siyang erase sa 34, no? So kasi halimbawa 136 ang gamitin natin, divide natin by 4, divisible siya by 4, by 34, no? And then since yan is 134 pa lang ang product niyan, yung product nito is 136 pa lang, kailangan natin ng additional na I2 para maging 138. Okay? So, kung meron na tayo niyan, yung first term natin will be 1 raised to 34. And then yung I squared natin will be equals to negative 1. So this will be 1 times negative 1, or so I raised to 138 will be equals to negative 1. You can check that out dun sa calculator din natin, no? To verify. Pero kailangan naka-imaginary or naka-complex I tayo. Okay? So later ko na lang papakita yun. Okay? Next, we have I raised to 227. So again, hanap kayo ng divisibility by 4 na malapit sa 227. Is 226, no? 224. Yes, si 224 is ano siya, divisible siya by 4. So 224 tapos I cube. Okay? Then si I224 natin, pwede natin i-represent as I to the 4th raised to 56. Okay? Times I cube. Then magiging 1 raised to 56 times ang I cube natin from our previous one is negative I. Okay? So ito yun. So times negative I. So this will be 1 times negative I. So equals sa negative I yung number na yun. Okay? So kung isipin natin, ang mahalaga lang natin alam na value dapat are yung I natin, yung I squared, yung I cubed, tsaka yung I to the 4th natin. Kasi ito yung pattern, yung start ng pattern natin, no? Ito yung different values niya. Okay? Ayan. So dapat yan yung alam natin na values niya. So when we check itong other examples natin, I raised to 2016. So 2016, is it divisible by 4? Yes, no? Divisible siya by 4. So we can represent that as I 4th raised to 504. And then that will be 1 raised to 504. So equals sa 1. See? I raised to 2016. Next, I raised to 537. So ang nearest divisible by 4 is I 536. Okay? So para maging 537 times I natin para plus 1. So this will be I to the 4th. So 536 is 134 times I. So that will be 134 times I. So 1 times I or equals sa I. Okay? So ganito yung sa imaginary numbers natin. So before we proceed, do you have any clarification regarding our imaginary number? May merong hindi naintindihan para we can go back and explain further? Okay tayo? Hello everyone, please. Feedback para alam ko kung ano. Okay? Thank you. Right, so hopefully no malinaw 'to. Kasi kaya kailangan natin maging um, alam natin yung mismong nangyayari dun sa imaginary numbers natin. Kasi yung ating complex number is a combination of a real number and imaginary number. Kaya yun yung i-define natin on the next slide. na sinasabi natin na si imaginary number natin is yung backbone ng ating complex number. So, now na alam na natin yung ibig sabihin niya, we can now define si complex number. And ang definition niya is the complex number is any number that can be written as the formula a plus bi, where I is the imaginary unit. Okay? Ito yun. And si a and b to sa ating complex number are yung ating real numbers. Okay? Ibig sabihin yan yung ating coefficient na belonging sa real numbers natin. Okay? So, basta may nakita tayong kadugtong na I na term dun sa term natin, ibig sabihin imaginary number 'yon. Okay? So, let's try to classify o yung rewrite yung ibang ano natin. So, ito tinatawag nating standard form ng ating complex number. Okay? Na minsan tinatawag natin siya, nire-represent natin siya as z is equals dun sa complex number natin. Ibig sabihin sa complex number system natin may be represented as the variable z. Okay? Wherein yung real part natin, tinatawag natin as shorten siya na real, no? And then yung imaginary part natin, shorten siya as im. Okay? Kaya minsan may makikita kayo kung magbabasa kayo ng ibang textbook, papakita niya REZ will be equals to what number? So ang tinatanong lang niya, what is the value of the real part nung complex number? So dito, A yung sagot niya. Okay? So, may nakita kayong IM, Z, is equals yan. So, tinatanong lang niya is what is the value of the coefficient. Kung ano, so positive B, no? So, be mindful na lang tayo dun sa sign ng ating mga term, no? So, dito, positive A siya dito. Okay? So, kung negative, lagay nyo lang as negative. Alright? So, let's try to rewrite yung following complex numbers na to be able to be familiar dun sa ating real and imaginary part. So we have 7i minus 2i. Again, our standard form is z is equals to a plus bi. Okay, so first term dapat natin is yung walang kasamang imaginary number, yung real part natin. So this will be equals to negative 2 plus 7i. Okay? So wala tayong violent reaction. So basically, rearranging lang yung terms basta yung ating sign will be consistent or will follow yung format natin. Okay? Next, we have 4 minus 3i. Pero as we can see, it's already in the standard form. Pero to be more practical, we can represent it as 4 plus negative 3i. Okay? Kasi ang common mistake kapag halimbawa pinahanap sa atin yung imaginary part ng ating complex number. Minsan, ang sinasagot ng student is 3 lang, no? Na well, in fact, dapat siya ay negative 3. So, to avoid this mistake, you can represent it as this, no? Para alam natin na kasama dapat yung negative number. O pag nagmamadali tayo, minsan, hindi natin na tatandaan, dapat negative 3 pala siya, hindi lang siya basta 3, no? So, definitely this answer will be different with this one, no? So we have to be mindful of that. Okay? Then next, we have 9i. So meron lang tayong imaginary part. So ibig sabihin, we have 0 plus 9i. Okay? So pag pinahanap ang ating real part ng ating complex number, our answer will be equal to 0. Okay? Ibig ko lang to. Alright? And then last, we have negative 2. So, ibig sabihin kahit whole number o real number siya, pwede siyang i-represent as complex number. So, i-represent natin siya as complex number. Paano? So, since wala siyang imaginary given, so that will be negative 2 plus 0i. Okay? So, pag tinanong kung ano yung ating imaginary number dun sa given complex number natin, that will be equal to 0. Okay? So, pag nakita kayo ng whole number and then ang sinosolve mo is complex number, ibig sabihin, pwede mo siyang i-represent as complex number din. Okay? Right? So, okay tayo dito? Okay? So, baka may question ha. Basta pag may question, please butt in, no? Para alam natin yung hindi naiintindihan. Next, we proceed dun sa ating complex plane. Okay? So, ibig sabihin sa complex number system natin, we can also plot it sa ating Cartesian plane. Pero ibay lang natin yung ating x and y axis o tinatawag nating abscissa at ordinate natin. Okay? So when we talk about complex number, ang tawag natin dun sa axis natin is a complex plane, wherein yung horizontal axis natin is equals dun sa real axis natin or yung real numbers natin. Okay? So ito pwede ko itong i-represent as yung ating real numbers, and then yung y-axis natin are our imaginary numbers, no? So whatever the value we have, okay? And then when we try to plot it dun sa ating complex plane, yung point na yon, kapag nagkameron tayo ng vector, no? Later in our discussion, ani naman natin yung vector, no, kung ibig sabihin ng vector. Pero when we connect from the origin, papunta do sa point na magi-intersect yung ating real part and imaginary part, yung mako-convert nating for equation doon will be our complex number na x plus yi, or in other terms, yung z natin equals to a plus bi. Okay? So, yung I pwedeng mapunta sa unahan, no? Or pwedeng sabi. Depende kasi sa book na minsan ito kasi since I is will be first in the alphabet compared sa Y, kaya nasa unahan yung I, no? Pero I know parang sa circuits, parang nauna din ng I, no? Kaya uh, just be mindful na kapag may I siya, imaginary number na siya. Whatever yung kasama niyang number, that will be the coefficient na B or Y dun sa complex number natin. Okay? So since alam na natin yung complex plane ulit, since alam naman natin ang ating Cartesian plane, no? We can plot the following complex number dun sa complex plane natin. So let's arrive with a one complex plane na lang na for all of the given natin. Okay? So let's have this as our real number, and then ito yung ating imaginary number. Okay? So same pa din, no? Yung ating, kung ito yung right, yung positive, and yung upward yung positive, so yung downward niya will be negative, and this one will be negative also. Okay? So, ayan. So, lagay ko na nga lang din para. Okay? So, we have yung first one, negative 4 plus 7i. So, yung real natin dito will be equals to negative 4. And then, yung ating imaginary will be equals to positive 7. So, paano natin siya ipa-plot? So, negative 4 mula dito sa natin. So, origin natin is 0, 0. So, negative 4 daw yung real. So, this will be 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, yung imaginary natin is 7. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, yung mismong yung kanyang intersection, that will be our point. Okay? So, itong point na to, yun yung taking a vector from origin papunta doon, no? So, that will be our negative 4 plus 7i. Okay? Pag sa complex plane. Alright? So, next is 6i plus 1. So, what we can do is to change muna sa standard form para hindi tayo nalilito. Okay? Then we can identify now that our real will be equals to 1 and our imaginary will be equals sa 6, positive 6. Okay? So, we have positive 1 and then positive 6. So, if yung intersection niya will be this one. So, that point connecting with the origin is our complex number 2. Okay? Hindi ko na lang ng number. Okay? Ayan. Right? Next, negative I minus 3. So, changing it to standard form, we have negative 3 plus negative 1i. Okay? So, our real number will be equals to negative 3 and our imaginary number will be equals to negative 1. So, negative 3 and then negative 1. So, will be our point, and that particular point, when connected with a line from the origin, will be our formula or our complex number. Okay, next we have 4i. So si 4i is 0 plus 4i. So ibig sabihin, ang real part natin is equals to 0 and ang imaginary part natin will be equals to 4. So 0, then positive 4. So ito lang yung point na yun, ibig sabihin. Okay? So yung vector na to, yan yung ating number 4. Okay? And last, we have negative 7. So although real number siya, we can represent it as a complex number. Okay? So we have negative 7 plus 0i for a while. Okay, so we have a real number equals to negative 7 and imaginary number equals to 0. Okay? So we have sa real part natin, we have 4, 5, 6, 7. So since 0 naman yung ating negative, this will be our point. And then yung connection ng ano natin from the origin, that will be our vector or our complex number. Okay? So I think everyone is marunong na, no, kung paano mag-plot. So ganyan lang po pinapakita sa complex plane yung ating complex numbers. Okay? Question for this part. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, so before we can go further dun sa ibang parts ng complex plane natin, we need to go dun sa operations na natin to better understand and appreciate yung complex number natin. And when we talk about operations, we will go back dun sa ating four fundamentals operations, which are addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So we will now go first dun sa addition and subtraction ng complex numbers natin. And we say na ang addition and subtraction ng complex numbers are similar sa addition and subtraction ng polynomials ng like term. So ibig sabihin, we add or subtract yung real part sa real part and then yung imaginary part sa imaginary part. So we have here several examples. So we have the first one. We add daw yung 5 minus 2i plus 7 plus 3i. So what we can do is to add yung kanyang real part. So alam naman natin yung real part na yan, no? So ito yung kanyang real part. Okay? Then ito yung ating imaginary part. Okay? So pag nag-add tayo, we can do 5 plus 7, okay? Plus, and then negative 2 plus 3i. Okay? So real sa real, imaginary sa imaginary. So simplifying this one, so we have 12, and then ito, plus negative 2 plus 3i, yan, I. So this will be I. So simplification lang or rewrite ko lang, this will be 12 plus I. So this will be our sum na agad nung ating complex number. So basically just combining yung real parts sa imaginary, sa real part and imaginary sa imaginary. So ang kailangan lang natin to understand is yung ating sign, no? Like for example dito, kung medyo nalilito talaga sa sign, I would suggest to rewrite again this complex number dun sa standard form natin na naka-quantity yung negative 2. Okay? Pero if you are confident na you are knowledgeable enough or hindi na kayo nalilito, you can proceed na, no, to subtract or to add yung imaginary part natin nakasama yung ating sign. Okay? And then once we simplify, we get this answer. Okay? Same with subtraction, pero what we can do with subtraction is to distribute na lang muna yung negative sign kasi yun nga yung lagi nagiging mistake ng student, no? So we can distribute yung minus yung subtraction sign natin dun sa succeeding term na kasunod niya, no? So redundant na tayo, no? Succeeding term na kasunod. So ito pwede natin siyang i-distribute dito sa nasa loob natin. Okay? So meaning itong negative natin, we can distribute muna doon. So we can copy yung first complex number natin and then we have negative times gawin natin plus muna ito, no? And then gawin natin, iba si negative number doon, meron siyang imaginary 1 dito. Okay? So that can be negative 1 times 9 plus negative 1 times 5i. Okay? So, distribute lang natin ulit. Okay? So, 10 minus 7i plus negative 9 minus 5i. So, parang meron na tayo ng addition na form na ulit. Okay? Para hindi na tayo nalilito sa sign mamaya, no? And then we can now combine yung ating real to real and then imaginary to imaginary. So we have 10 minus 9 plus negative 7i minus 5i. So we have 1 plus, this will be negative 12i, and then simplify natin. So 1, so distribute natin positive to negative, that will be negative 12i. So this will be our um, answer, no, for our subtraction. Okay? Right? So, yan, paano pag magkasama na siya? So, we can always do na didistribute natin or we can perform simultaneously, no? So, depende kung saan kayo mas nangadalian. Ako, I would suggest na i-simplify nyo na lang muna yung equation so that you will not have mistake when performing yung ibang, no? Yung ibang operation. So, what I would do is to copy muna yung first two complex number natin. And then dito, tsaka ko lang siya lalagay. Okay? Ito yung ginawa ko doon sa kabila. Okay? Then, we can copy again. And simplify lang natin to. We have now negative 4. Negative times negative, that will be positive 7i. Okay? Now, we can now combine lahat ng real. So, we have 5 plus 2 minus 4 plus I minus 3i plus 7i. Simplifying, we have 7 minus 4 is 3. Then plus, yung nasa parenthesis natin is 1 minus 3 is negative 2 plus 7i. So, positive 5i. So, simplification, 3 plus 5i. So, this will be our final answer when we try to combine addition and subtraction sa isang solution. Okay? Question for addition and subtraction? Okay? Right? So, kung walang question, wala tayong question? Alright? Next, we have yung multiplication ng complex number naman. Right? So, in multiplying complex number daw, similar din siya sa polynomial natin. We can apply yung distributive property niya. Okay? So, in addition, we can make use ng fact ng number natin na I squared, no? Kasi when we try to multiply, we tend to have a term na merong I squared. And when we see an I squared dun sa ating equation, we can change that to negative 1 kasi napag-aralan natin kanina ang I squared ay equal sa negative 1 na value. Okay? And to simplify yung pinaka-result natin into the standard form na a plus bi. So let's try yung first example natin. We have multiply yung negative 6i natin to 2 minus 3i. So, when we see a singular term na nasa unahan ng ating complex number, actually, di ba yung term yung itong complex number na 'to, we can represent it as 0 minus 6i, no? Times 2 minus 3i. So what we can do is kung nakakita tayo 'di ba ng ganito, is to use yung FOIL method natin, no? Kung matatandaan niyo nung sa polynomials. So ano yung FOIL method? Ang FOIL method is yung first multiplied ng first, okay? And then kasunod is outer, multiply natin doon sa outer. And then we have yung inner. So ang inner natin, ibahin ko yung kulay, ito. Yung ating inner. And then yung last is yung ating last, okay? So ibig sabihin yung last ay ito. Okay? Yan po yung ating FOIL method. Tinatawag sa ano nun. Okay? Na pwede natin gamitin yan as a guide in multiplying complex number. Okay? So dito, pakita muna natin using FOIL method. Okay? So dito, so we have 0 times 2. Next, outer to last, we have 0 times negative 3i. Next is we have yung inner natin. So we have negative 6i times 2. Plus yung last natin, we have negative 6i times negative 3i. Okay? So yung first two terms natin will be 0. Then yung third term natin will be negative 12i. Then yung next is, that will be negative 6 times negative 3. That is 18i squared. So we have an I squared. So alam natin na si I squared ay equals sa negative 1. So negative 12i plus 18 times negative 1. This will be negative 12i minus 18. Or i-change natin to standard form. We have negative 18 plus 12i. Okay? So this will be our product sa kanya. Okay? And then we can always shortcut na lang na itong 6i natin, distribute na natin agad, no? So that will always go dito sa solution na to. Okay? So pinakita ko lang na kung bakit ganun yung nangyayari. Okay? So kung nakakita naman kayo ng ganung term na bawa yung imaginary part lang yung meron o real part lang, we can distribute na lang agad yan dun sa ating complex number na nakamultiply sa kanya. Okay? So eventually, that will be the same as this one na. Okay? So kumbaga, na neglect mo na yung o na ka-save ka ng step na to. Okay? Pero ako nga, for assurance, mas gusto ko siyang nire-represent as like this one. Okay? Para mas ano kayo, mas may sinusunod kang steps. Okay? Next, we have another one. Okay? So, applying yung previous, can you guys please try this one? So, I'll give you 3 minutes to solve. No? If you have answer, you can type in your answer do sa chat box natin. So, you have 3 minutes to try this one. Check out kung makukuha ninyo. Okay? So, pa-try. Okay, so let's try to solve this one. So, we have ito yung atin. So, we can do yung FOIL method niya. So, yung first natin, 3 times 4 plus yung outer natin, 3 times 5i plus yung inner natin. So, negative 4i times 4. And then yung last natin as negative 4i times 5i. Okay? Next, we have 12 plus 15i minus 16i minus 20i squared. Okay? And mind tayo na I squared is equals to negative 1. So we have 12 minus I minus 20 times negative 1. Okay? So that will be positive 20 plus 32. So 32 minus I. So this will be our answer. Okay? So, yan. Yun yung sinasabi kong baka nagkakamali kayo dun sa sign, no? Kaya, I would suggest, please try to use parenthesis, no? Para hindi tayo nagkakamali. Okay? Kasi yun talaga lagi ang mistake, no? Kapag naman nasanay tayong gumagamit ng parenthesis, eventually pwede na natin siyang tanggalin kapag nagso-solve na tayo. Alright? So, I hope okay tayo dito, no? 32 minus I yung sagot niya. Okay? Next is, ayan. So, paano pag halimbawa ganito? So, we have 5 plus 2i tsaka 5 minus 2i. So, as you can see, same yung value ng real sa real. Tapos yung imaginary natin is same yung magnitude niya, magkaiba lang siya ng sign. Okay? This type of number, tinatawag natin siya as complex conjugate. Okay? Ang ibig sabihin ng complex conjugate? A complex conjugate is a number wherein yung real part niya, okay, pero siyang equal na value. So dito yung real part natin para siyang 5. And then dito, yung imaginary part niya is may equal siyang magnitude pero opposite in sign. Okay? So ibig sabihin, kapag halimbawa may isang number, halimbawa pinakuha sa inyo is, halimbawa, ano kayo number s 3 plus 2i. Tapos tinanong, get yung complex conjugate ng number na yun. So pag sinabing complex conjugate niya, all you need to do is to copy, no? Tapos i-change sign mo lang yung imaginary number mo. Okay? So ibig sabihin kapag halimbawa meron tayong 5 minus 4i, para makuha yung complex conjugate niya, all we need to do is 5 plus 4i. Okay? So yun yung ibig sabihin ng complex conjugate. And dito, sa part na to, we are multiplying complex conjugate number. So paano daw yung solution niya? So of course, we can always use yung FOIL method, no? Solution. Okay? Pero let's try to represent yung complex conjugate natin doon sa standard form natin. So we have a plus bi tsaka a minus bi. So iba ganyan yan. So try natin pakita yung kanyang FOIL method, no? So we have a times a plus a times negative bi plus bi times a plus bi times negative bi. So simplify natin, we have a squared minus abi plus abi minus bi squared. So simplify natin, this will be 0 na. So a squared minus b, since meron tayong I squared, that is equals to negative 1. So yung answer daw natin will be just a squared plus b, dapat may square to, b squared. Okay? So yan yung isang property natin. When we see a complex conjugate number, pwede daw gawin natin, i-square lang natin yung value ng a at b niya. Okay? So dito, sa solution natin dito, so yung a natin dyan will be 5 and yung b natin will be 2. So yung ating a plus b squared will be 5 squared plus 2 squared. So that will be 25 plus 4 or equal siya sa 29. Okay? So, ganyan daw po yung ating sa complex conjugate natin na solution. Okay? So, ibig sabihin yung naging ano natin is a real number. Or kung gusto mo i-change to standard form, we have 29 plus 0i. Okay? So, ibig sabihin pag nakakita kayo ng complex conjugate, kahit gawin nyo is a squared plus b squared na lang, automatic yung solution. Right? Question, sir, kahit po complex conjugate, pwede pa rin po na gamitin. Yes, okay lang. Okay lang kunin natin yung FOIL method. Same din yung lalabas. 29 pa din siya. Okay? Kasi pag FOIL method mo ito, ang magiging solution mo is the same as this one. Sa-substitute mo lang yung value ng a at b dito, no? Pero dito, pag tinatanong yung a squared tsaka b squared, kahit naman negative yung mailagay mo sa b, since naka-squared naman yan, magiging positive pa din yan. Okay? Pag ganito ang variables, complex conjugate, what do you mean? Depende sa solution natin. Later sa division, para ma-solve natin yung division natin kasi, kailangan natin ng complex conjugate. Okay? Kaya in-introduce ko sa complex conjugate para ma-eliminate yung imaginary number dun sa ating denominator, which is yung next na ipapakita ko after nito. Okay? Alright, so Pero so far, may question tayo regarding sa complex conjugate and sa product ng complex conjugate. Okay tayo? So you can use a squared plus b squared na lang kapag complex conjugate siya. Okay? Pero kung ayaw niyo na ng additional memorization, you can use FOIL method na lang. Okay? Para di na kayo nalilito. FOIL method na lang ulit. Alright? So, yan. Yung complex conjugate na yan, as I've said, gagamitin natin yan sa division. Okay? So, to divide a complex number, we apply the technique used to rationalize yung ating denominator. And sa rationalization, ang ginagawa niyan is, yun nga, minumultiply natin ng conjugate number. And since alam na natin kung ano ibig sabihin ng complex conjugate, we can use that theory to apply dito sa division natin. We need daw to multiply the numerator and denominator by the conjugate of the denominator, and the result can be simplified into a standard form na a plus bi. Okay? So we have here, halimbawa, 1 over 2 minus 3i. So yung first step natin is to identify yung denominator natin. Ang denominator natin is yung ating nasa ilalim, no? And then, ang sabi niya, kunin natin yung conjugate, yung complex conjugate natin. Ang complex conjugate niyan will be equals to 2 plus 3i. O, reverse lang natin yung sign ng 3, no? And then, kailangan daw multiply natin both the numerator and the denominator by the conjugate of the denominator. So, multiply natin ng 2 plus 3i over 2 plus 3i. Okay? So, pag meron na tayong ganyan, basic na lang yan na numerator multiplied by numerator, denominator multiplied by denominator. Okay? So, para mangyayari is 1 times 2 plus 3i. And then ito will be 2 minus 3i times 2 plus 3i. And mind you, meron tayong product ng complex conjugate sa denominator. So, our solution will now be much simpler, no? Kung i-apply na natin yung a squared plus b squared, yung numerator natin sa ngayon, nangyari is 1 lang siya. So, this will be 2 plus 3i lang din over complex conjugate natin na product. So, a natin dito is 2, ang b natin is 3. So, we have 2 squared plus 3 squared. Okay? Simplify natin, 2 plus 3i. This will be 4 plus 9. Okay? So, 2 plus 3i over 13. Okay? And to simplify that, we just need to separate yung terms natin. We have 2 over 13 plus 3 over 13i. Okay? So, this can be our final answer na. In some cases, chine-change lang siya sa decimal point. Okay? Pero our final answer will be this one na. Okay? So pag chine-change sa decimal point, depende na lang sa nasa multiple choice, no? Kung ilang digit yung nakalagay niyang answer. Pero this can be represented as 0.154 plus 3 over 13 is 0.231i. Okay? So ito yung another answer niya in decimal point. Pero mas napasimplify siya kasi we know na ang product ng complex conjugate is just this one. Okay? So that is our first example. Another example, let's try. Okay, so we have I, negative 5i plus 4i. So, ayan, ginawa kong dalawa yung term, no? Para matry natin. So, sige, kahit ako muna yung mag-solve nito, no? So, multiply natin ang complex conjugate ng denominator. So we have 4 minus I over 4 minus I. So this will be I minus 5I times 4 minus I. And then yung complex conjugate product natin na 4 plus I times 4 minus I. Okay? So yung sa denominator, we can perform na simultaneously, no? So this can be 1 times 4 plus 1 times negative I plus negative 5I times 4, and then plus negative 5I times negative I over, ito gawin ko na lang yung product natin na 8 squared plus b squared. So 4 squared plus 1 squared. Okay? Simplify, we have 4. This one is 1 lang to, no? Okay. So negative I And then we have minus 20i plus 5i squared all over 4 plus 1. Simplify natin. Um, ito, change ko na siya sa negative 1. So that will be negative 5. Okay? Plus 4. So negative 1 minus 21i all over 5. So simplify lang natin. Negative 1 over 5 minus 21 over 5i. This can be our final answer. Or we can change that into decimal form. That will be negative 0.2 minus 21 over 5. That is 4.2i. Okay? So, two answers are acceptable. Depende na lang sa choices kung halimbawa, multiple choice exam. Okay? So, basically performing multiplication lang din. Basta alam natin na kailangan kunin natin yung complex conjugate natin. Right? Okay? Sige, to test your knowledge, please try this one. I'll give you 3 minutes ulit. Okay? So please try to solve this one. Okay, so let's go back to sa previous example. So thank you for noticing Mr. San Pascual, no? So dito, yan, kamo madali ko din, no? Yung 4 squared, hindi ko siya na 4 squared. So this should be 16, no? 16 plus 1 dapat siya. So actually our final answer is incorrect. So dapat this is 17. Okay? So dapat over 17 tayo dito. So thank you for that note. Yan. So i-reduce nyo na lang according to the correct value. So 1 over 17, that is 0.59. Sige lang, continue yung sa yung kabila, no? Kung habang kinokorek ko lang to. 1.235. Okay, thank you for noticing that. So tinetest ko lang talaga kayo. Okay? Alright, so dami nang nag-input ng sagot. So may okay, so yung sabihin ko na lang yung correct, yung kay Mr. Kamota is correct. Simplify mo na lang. Okay? So the rest is medyo may mali pa. Yung sa'yo pala, Ibora, is correct na. Okay? Yes, Mr. Deliuba, correct. Okay? So let's solve yung pinakita nating last. Okay? Ayan. So let's have this one. So we can create na x minus 3i. So dito, yung gagawin natin, 0 plus 2i, no? So yan yung complex form niya. Okay? So pag yung conjugate niya, times natin ng, pwedeng negative 2i na lang actually, no? Pero pwede nyo lagyan ng 0 kung talagang nalilito. Pero pwede tayong stick ng ganyan. Okay? And then, we try to multiply 8 minus 3i times negative 2i all over. So since this is already b squared na lang siya, no? So that is 2 squared natin. Okay? So this will be 8 times negative 2i. So, tapos plus negative 3i times negative 2i. Okay? Then over 4. So we have negative 16i. Then this will be positive 6i squared all over 4. So ito will be equals to negative 1. So this should be negative 16i minus 6 all over 4. So that is negative 16i over 4 minus 6 over 4, or negative 3 halves, ayusin ko na sa standard form, plus 16 over 4 is ilan? 4, no? Exactly 4. So 4i minus, okay, sorry. Plus negative 4i. Okay? Or pwede natin gawing negative 1.5 minus 4i. So those answers are both accepted. Okay? So yan yung solution natin. Any question para sa solution or clarification? Alright, so okay na tayo. Okay. So, ayan. So, before we conclude tong discussion natin for today, I would like to note something, no? So, when multiplying, dividing complex number, we must take care to understand na yung product and quotient rule for radicals require that both A and B are positive, no? Kasi minsan may given na negative yung numbers natin. Like, for example, this one. We have to multiply -6 and itong -15. So, naturally, ang instinct natin, ang gagawin natin, ito yung law ng radical sign natin. Baka ang gawin natin is, gawin natin square root tapos -6 times -15. That will be, ilan yan? That will be square root of 9, positive 90. And then when we try to, simplify, baka 3 square root of 10 yung maging answer natin, which is incorrect, no? Dapat pag nakakita kayo ng nagmo-multiply kayo, nagdi-divide kayo ng both negative na number, ang mas magandang gawin is to change muna yung individual number natin into an imaginary number before combining them or applying yung radical rule natin. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, ang solution dapat natin, gawin natin muna siyang square root of -1 times square root of 6, okay? Times square root of -1 times square root of 15. Okay? And then, mangyayaring kasunod is, ito is equals, diba to sa I? So, I square root of 6 times I square root of 15. So, pag minultiply natin siya, that will be I squared square root of 6 times 15. So, magiging siyang negative 1 square root of 90. So, yung final answer natin should be negative 1 times 3 square root of 10 or negative 3 square root of 10. No? So, kung makikita nyo, yung sign is different. So, hindi siya mag-equal kapag ganito yung ginawa natin. So, kapag pareha siyang negative, mas magandang gawin or in any situation, mas maganda, i-convert nyo muna siya dun sa imaginary imaginary counterpart niya before you proceed sa any operation. Okay? So dito, ginawa natin siyang square root of 6i tsaka square root of 15i to represent yung square root of -6 tsaka square root of -15 para makuha natin yung tamang answer niya. Okay? Kasi kapag diniretso natin siyang ganito, applying yung rule ng product rule, magiging positive yung answer natin. Kumbaga, nakaligtaan na yung I squared natin, which is very important when we are dealing with complex number. Okay? So, yun lang naman yung note na kailangan tandaan. Okay? So, if you have no question or other concern, this ends our lecture for today. Okay? So, ayan. Okay na tayo sa introduction ng complex number. Okay?